Thank you very much once again, TWF. Thanks once again to Rohit, Simran, and the entire TWF team for inviting me. And it's wonderful to be back. I know this time we've split the audience between two rooms, but hopefully we'll try to make it as interesting and engaging as we can. Yeah. So thank you very much, gentlemen. For taking time out and being a part of this panel. Gives me great pleasure to be interacting with you. I know there are quite a few familiar faces, and I'd love to continue the discussion in more ways than one. So today here we are going to talk about how electric vehicles, let's say specifically in the two-wheeler, three-wheeler segment, are going to redefine the growth trajectory in India. What role are the stakeholders going to play in the electrification ecosystem? I've got a few interesting points, at least I think, gentlemen, to discuss with you. Srinivas, I'll start with you first. You are the managing director of Bike Bazaar. It's a very, very unique, innovative concept, and you're a pioneer in this field. So I'm very happy that you have taken this step forward. Correct me if I'm wrong. First of all, congratulations to you on raising 500 crores rupees in Series D funding. Is that number correct? Or should I correct that number?
I wish it was that. But yeah, total, I think till now we have raised about 400 odd crores on all series
close.
put together, ABC.
That's close, yeah.
Put together, yeah.
Excellent. So now the point I'd like to hear your thoughts on is, your vision is to become the largest two-wheeler lifecycle management company in India, right? You also aim to onboard over 1 million customers by FY24. I mean, that's a very, very aggressive and very, very good target to have. One of the key challenges today in the electric two-wheeler world is financing, right? We have seen that some of the NBFCs and traditional government or state-owned banks have always been a little hesitant when it comes to financing electric two-wheelers or electric vehicles in general for multiple reasons. They don't know this technology, they haven't seen it, they don't trust it for whatever reason. And you finance, again, correct me if I'm wrong, about 250 to 300 electric two-wheelers per month.
Almost about 500 now.
500, there you go. So tell us your vision on how financing electric two-wheelers have evolved in India, number one. And I want to hear your thoughts on, is this the right time for microfinancing in India? Is this the time for regional financing in India where there could be partnerships with really small regional financing companies within their ecosystem or within their region? So how do you see microfinancing, regional financing taking off in India?
Okay, so thanks a lot. So I think to set the context right, the total finance penetration of two-wheelers in India, that means if 100 two-wheelers are sold in India, I'm not talking about electric, I'm talking about IC engine vehicles. If 100 two-wheelers are sold in India, only 45 two-wheelers get financed, even in IC engine vehicles.
Right.
When you compare that with the car industry, it's almost close to 90%.
Correct.
So traditionally, the banks, traditionally the bigger NBFCs, etc., have been very, very reluctant to anyway finance a two-wheeler. Okay, so you start off with the premise that two-wheeler financing itself is a bit of a challenge, and the credit underwriting, which is done by the people like us who finance a lot of two-wheelers, is a combination of the credit risk as well as the asset risk. Now, in the IC engine vehicle, the asset risk is very, very low because you know that you have a very good resale value, or even if your losses are there when you repossess a vehicle, the losses are going to be minimal. So the biggest issue which starts coming with electric vehicle is that today there is no second-hand market as such, and hence even the players who are actually financing normal two-wheelers are reluctant to finance electric two-wheelers. But we see it very differently. We see this entire thing very differently. If we start looking at electric and we have done very extensive work with people like last mile delivery players, etc. We have done a lot of interviews with them. We have made them ride vehicles, etc. And we have come to the conclusion that the entire financing business will have to change from an ownership to a ridership model.
Correct.
So while the Swiggy delivery boy is very, very keen to ride a electric two-wheeler, he is very reluctant to buy one. So there have to be companies which will have to basically buy a large number of electric two-wheelers, and then they will have to start leasing them out to either individuals or to logistics companies which are there all over the place. The point is that everybody is passing the buck. Nobody wants to own it.
Right.
Everybody says, I love the vehicle, but I'm not going to own it.
Right.
So I think as Bike Bazaar, we feel that there's a fantastic opportunity for us. And we are actually started this, that we have started leasing vehicles now, basically.
Right.
So in short, that's the answer. As far as microfinance is concerned, microfinance by itself has never been very successful in doing two-wheelers. Mm-hmm. So I feel that it's finally the two-wheeler, I would say, specialist companies which will end up doing this kind of financing. And one model is not going to succeed. The models are going to be multiple. Financing will have to be very, very innovative. So I do not see any banks, I do not see anybody else getting into this at all. I have also been having a lot of discussion with World Bank, etc. and all that, and they are very, very keen on actually putting in a lot of money into India for financing of two-wheelers.
Right. So you made a very good point, Srinivas, especially on the shift from ownership to ridership. Absolutely spot on. We also spoke about asset risk. Has it got to do a lot with awareness? I mean, is it simply because the banks and NBFCs are just not aware of it? I mean, does that mean there's an opportunity for the EV ecosystem players to create awareness? How do you see that?
See, the problem, I'm going to be very frank about it. The problem is, the elephant in the room is the battery.
Right.
Okay, and it's not the bank. Even the most uneducated rider today is very reluctant to take a risk on the battery.
Right.
Not because it's going to catch fire, I'm not talking about that. Because he doesn't know how long it's going to last. We have seen that if you drive 100 kilometers per day, and which is what a normal Swiggy guy does, the battery conks off in 2 years' time. That's the risk which he doesn't want to take. And that's the risk that we would take basically as a leasing company.
Understood. So I'll come back to those points again later. So Arvind, I want to come to you now. So just a couple of points I want to place. So over the past 4 years, Spark Minda, of which Arvind is the CEO of the Mechatronics Asset Division, you have closed 4 deals, right? First one is a partnership with Ride Vision, which is an Israeli company for two-wheeler ADAS system, right? Fantastic. Number 2, you entered into a JV with Infac LX, of Korea for antenna technology. Third one with EVQ Point, EV Solutions from Bangalore, which is brilliant. And last but not the least, you've sold your minority stake in Minda Stoneridge, right? So I'm particularly interested in the collision avoidance technology. When we talk about ADAS, advanced driver assistance systems, we always talk about four-wheelers, right? Collision avoidance, ESP, so on and so forth. We never talk about collision avoidance for two-wheelers. So I must congratulate you on the fact that you were one of the pioneers in this space to bring in ADAS in the two-wheeler space. So now, how do you see this partnership changing the safety equation in India? I mean, do you think we will see, let's say, a lot more take-up rates in terms of EV collision avoidance penetration, ADAS penetration, which will hopefully address accidents and fatalities in India? What are your thoughts on that?
First of all, good morning to you all. I think the key word here is anticipation, right? It's the anticipation of the evolution of the industry. And Spark Minda, we 3-4 years ago, and more, I guess, importantly, in the last 2 years, we've made a bet on penetration of electronics and software. So Spark Minda over the last 6 decades has been a traditional mechanical mechatronics type company. But we've sort of embraced this kind of evolution based on anticipation that we're going to go and become essentially an electronic software company in the next 5-7 years, right? So that's inevitable. Specific to ADAS, again, anticipating the evolution. So you mentioned in one of your earlier segments in the other room that 67% of all the accidents, not fatalities, but accidents in India happen on two-wheelers, like motorcycles, scooters, bicycles, and so on. The other one is 40% of the total fatalities also happen because of two-wheelers. But just because somebody didn't die doesn't mean he or she didn't suffer severe injuries. So we made a bet that this is a technology we should invest in, and therefore we have a technical license agreement with this company, Ride Vision in Israel, who are providing us this camera technology that allows a rear view camera to send a signal back to the ECU that helps you find out what your blind spots are and sort of mitigate a dangerous overtake, for example. So that's just the beginning, right? So now, and by the way, two or three OEMs have already expressed some interest on their high-end vehicles. Now, obviously, this technology is vehicle powertrain agnostic. It could be internal combustion engine, it could be EV. But we think with the advent of EV and the combination of Gen Zs and millennials who are more safety conscious, we think there will be an adoption at some rate. And it'll become more and more affordable over time, right? Because cameras are essentially commoditized. So the question really is, how do you create the software in terms of fusion technologies and so on? How do you take that to the next step? So even for like forward collision warning, so we will use camera technologies, we will use software to try and test the market, permeate the market, and take it forward. Now the legislation we hope will come.
Correct.
It is just a matter of the consumers wanting it, making it affordable, so the OEMs are able to sell it, and then the lobbying and the legislation we think will come. Now four-wheeler legislation will come, because it's there in Europe and the US in terms of emergency braking and so on. You cannot do emergency braking on two-wheelers. However, outside of that, everything else you can do, right? In terms of collision warnings, all kinds of LEDs will light up and so on. So we are trying to develop this over time, make it affordable. And once we have a basic critical mass, I think it will automatically lend itself to some sort of lobbying legislation. So that's how we look at it.
Excellent. So when you said the camera-based system, it just came to my mind, Arvind. So just a follow-up point. Today we are already talking about smart helmets, right? Today we are talking about connected smart helmets where you've got displays, communication, and so on. So do you think your camera-based system could be connected to a smart helmet, right? In order to enhance the effect of the safety. The reason I ask you this is, there are discussions in Europe, and I've been part of them, that there's too much information out there. Can that become a distraction to a rider rather than being a help, right? So where do you see, that thin line separating safety versus distraction, when we talk about connected technologies, helmets, cameras, and so on?
Yeah, so the last thing we want with ADAS is frequent interruption, where the lights keep going on and then the driver starts ignoring these lights, right?
Yes.
So yeah, I think this is a concern we have as well. But I think we have mechanisms using either haptics or a light. So lighting gets a little bit distracting after a while. But we're also looking into other technologies surrounding that in terms of haptics. For example, any emergency situation could be haptically communicated back to the driver. So there are ways to go around it. So like I said, this is sort of a basket of technologies that will just evolve over time. But once people realize that, hey, this will save my life, collision avoidance first of all, and even if there's a collision, I can make it minor because I took action or I took evasive action, right? So I think we're looking at it as something that, despite all the challenges, will still make it into the market, simply because India has the highest accident rate in the world. This is totally unacceptable. At some point, it has to happen. And that's why we made a bet. We made it probably earlier than some of the others, but I think we are going in the right direction.
No, I completely agree with you on that. I think you've just made the bet in the right direction. So I'll come back to you again on another point. Ayush, I want to come to you now. You have been a manufacturer of electric three-wheelers, electric two-wheelers as well. Now, over the past 2 years, India has witnessed a very important trend. It's a shift from the one-ton SCV category, your Tata Aces, Mahindra Maximos, and so on, to electric three-wheelers, right? We have seen quite a few small and medium fleet operators who have said, hey, I see more value in electric three-wheeler than an SCV, which is a four-wheeler. So obviously the main reason being overall TCO, right? TCO is the bottom line when it comes to the shift towards electrification. So do you see this as an electric three-wheeler manufacturer? Do you see this shift as well? Because we did some research last year for an OEM, which specifically revolved around this, on understanding why customers are shifting from an SCV, four-wheeler SCV, to an electric three-wheeler. So how do you see this segmental shift as an electric three-wheeler manufacturer?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. It's a very important point which has been put forward, and we have definitely witnessed this over a period of time. TCO definitely a big reason behind this. Uh, the operator, which is right now mainly four-wheelers, fleet operated,
Yeah.
while if you see on a three-wheeler, it is more individual driver operated. That is the second biggest reason why people want to shift from a four-wheeler to a three-wheeler, because a fleet operator has to invest a huge amount of money and take the risk where he is operating the vehicle and asking the drivers or hiring the drivers, which in turn don't have a sense of ownership when they drive the vehicle, which increases the maintenance costs, the running costs, and deteriorate the life of the vehicle. These are the three, four basic reasons why people feel that the shift has to happen on a three-wheeler than as compared to a four-wheeler.
So the shift in ownership is what you think is the key driving factor. Like you said, from a fleet operator to an individual driver owner. So for a single driver owner, it's a lot more important to save fuel and money than a fleet operator. So you think that is the main reason?
Yes.
Excellent. So I'll come back to another point later, Ayush. Lokesh, I want to come to you now. So you are the CTO of a bearing company, NBC Bearing. So I read in an article that NBC Bearings has developed a smart sensor or smart bearing technology for two-wheelers and electric motors, right? Now, obviously, when that happens, you're able to look at electrification in a completely new light from a fleet manager's perspective. Predictive maintenance, data analytics, even diagnostics to a certain extent. So, how do you see the data generated by smart sensors, which are integrated in electric motors, playing a bigger role for fleet operators, especially in the FMS space or fleet management solutions or fleet management system space? What do you think about that?
Good morning. So we started this EV journey around 4 years back when things were going. So of course, it started with like, okay, no noise and etc. So it should be low noise, high speed, and so on. But then when we started interacting with various OEMs, a couple of things came from the bearing side. One of them is saying that, okay, where do I get the best control? So for the vehicle management system or the drivability, they said we need some data which is coming in. So that was the first point which we said, okay, let's start how do we integrate the sensor? So that makes the things easy. And we actually partnered with one of the three-wheeler OEM. They said, give us the sensor integrated bearing for their controllers. And that's how the sensor bearing work started almost 2.5 years back.
Right.
And it has been now in production version, tested for 1 lakh kilometer and so on. So that was the genesis of this electrical, where it was a pure RPM direction. And then this requirement came saying that, okay, let's put some temperatures, let's put some vibration. And that's where this whole game of how does the Indian road condition, which data is going to come in, what is the noise and what is the real data? How is the life going to be changing? So now, as earlier, the vehicles used to go to the service based on the filter change and etc. Now it's going to be one place where the metal to metal contact is happening and which is not visible, unlike tire, is bearings. And that's where the temperature is very critical and vibration data. So we think this data which is going to come in will certainly help a lot. All the fleet operators, also the more than fleet operator, even the vehicle owner. Because when to take it now, the Indian mindset is very conscious that they don't want to go unless it's need. It should be just coming on. And so what strategy we have adopted is like we are collecting a lot of data. We are inserting the fault in our rigs and then take them to the road and see how does it come in and bring it in front. So we think it's going to be very important for two-wheeler and three-wheeler as it comes along.
Correct. So whenever we talk about fleet operators, right, for them the biggest driver for adoption of any technology is the money saved. They need to see at the end of the year or whatever it is, hard money saved. So are you able to translate your smart sensor technology into monetary benefits?
So that's an interesting question. So we as a bearing company are giving how to put the data.
Right.
Right. So if the idea here it is when the bearing fails, It is not just coming from the bearing fails, then it should be able to say, okay, this is the bearing which has failed and just need to go in. So downtime is going to be very, very important.
Downtime.
And that's where I think it's going to be a big thing. Number two, the bearing phase, the data which will come in, especially say vibration data is going to come in, or overload data is going to come in, we can actually sense how's the usable pattern. So is the operator operating as per the specification, or is it going out of that? So that also is another warranty claim settlement it can help. And third, when the data comes in, it is no more checking where the things are wrong. The data will say, okay, this is the failure part, just go for it. So as a bearing company, we are just enabling the OEMs and the fleet operator rather than monetizing ourselves. So and the unique thing which we are doing right now is like, of course, we are working, but we are letting, being the flexible organization, we say, how do you want the data to come in at your place? And we would be happy to help you.
So you are playing the role of an enabler and a facilitator. Yeah.
That's right. And the way, as you said, the collaborator, like
Exactly.
there are a lot more places. One thing which I just wanted to add was like when we started working with the two-wheeler and three-wheeler, like we realized a lot of people are just bringing the technology from, but Indian road condition is different. Indian drivability is different. And Swiggy, what somebody mentioned, right? Swiggy, the way, it's very different. And now you have to make the product for the Indian conditions. And that's where we saw that there's a lot of opportunity for collaborating with the OEMs and with the users.
Correct. Excellent points, Lokesh. Rajat, I'm going to come to you now. So you are the Vice President at Sun Mobility, a pioneer in India when it comes to battery swapping, right? If you look at battery swapping, it solves three primary issues, right? One is it lowers upfront costs because you're taking the battery cost out of the equation. Number two, it reduces the refueling time, right? Typically, refueling time, when you talk about refueling, right? When you're charging electric two-wheelers, you're talking about 5, 6, 7, 8 hours. You're reducing that to minutes now. The third one eliminates range anxiety, one of the biggest challenges for any fleet operator in India. Now, I also, happen to read an article where you've partnered with 3 stakeholders. IOCL, which is an energy player. I can call it an energy player, no more petroleum now. Second, Amazon, a fleet operator. And number 3, Omega Seiki Mobility, which is an EV OEM. So, you see, you've partnered with different stakeholders, energy player, OEM, and a fleet operator, right? So, one of the biggest challenges when we talk about battery swapping is standardization to some certain extent, right? Obviously, when we talk about industry level swapping, we are still not there yet because we have no form of standardization. So, does that mean, or am I right in saying, the early adopters are going to be captive fleets where you have a set of 100, 200, 300 electric vehicles where you can afford to have battery swapping facilities. So how do you see the evolution of battery swapping in India? Do you see captive fleets as early adopters before we see large-scale adoption? Or do you see it relegated only to captive fleets across India?
No, thanks. It's an excellent question. And thanks for the introduction. Sun Mobility, as most of you know, is an energy company primarily into battery swapping. We, as you rightly said, take care of 3 key issues, which is cost. Everyone needs to be asset light or wants to be asset light, as you had mentioned. And second is range anxiety. You don't really, a lot of fixed battery solutions have a range of ranging about 100, starting from about 80 to about 150. And third is the time for charging, right? So it takes about a couple of minutes for you to swap and go. And safety as well, right? And that's another critical aspect of batteries. Apart from the few names that you've given, what we feel Sun Mobility is more interoperable solution to a lot of players.
Yeah.
And the segments that a battery swapping player like us and some of the others in the market are also there, looks at interoperability for various segments.
Yes.
So I'm talking about two-wheelers, three-wheelers, e-rickshaws, autos, loaders.
And you experimented with buses as well.
And buses as well, right? So all of them can use the same battery, and that's interoperability from one perspective. The second perspective is that when we integrate our solution with various other OEMs, right? So Omega Seki is one of them, Piaggio is the other, Hero Electric is the third. There are a bunch of more that are taking Sun Mobility and swapping as an additional variant in their vehicle portfolio, which allows them to, number one, increase the market for electric vehicles. Yeah. So we're looking at I think we sold about 450,000 electric vehicles in India last year. I think we're now sort of doubling it every year. And there is a huge demand when it comes to fleet operators, specifically fleet operators in the initial years, where a lot of them do not have to worry about range, correct, where a lot of them do not have to worry about charging, yeah, and they basically go and swap and finish their day, and they can run 100, 150. There are a couple of fleet operators, that do grocery delivery, for example, and that's a key segment now for electric vehicles, which they need to do about 150, 180 kilometers a day, and that can only be done with a swapping solution. Yeah. And that's what we're trying to address. Safety, range, cost, from a fleet operator and an end user perspective.
Understood. So a follow-up question to that, spoke about interoperability. Maybe Ayush, you can talk about interoperability, from an OEM's perspective in a few minutes. But Rajat, to continue with you, now obviously Niti Aayog has come up with the battery swapping policy draft, right? One of the larger policy objectives is to have a circular ecosystem, right from, let's say, rare earth metal mining to cell battery manufacturing, first life mobility usage, second life energy storage usage, recycle, reuse, back to rare earth metals. Entire circular ecosystem. So, and we have seen, thankfully, in India that a couple of companies like Loham or Atero have demonstrated viability, commercial viability. So, as a battery swapping player, what are your thoughts, or where do you see yourself playing a role in this circular ecosystem? Because you play a role in each one of these elements in some way or the other. So do you see Sun Mobility becoming a key stakeholder in the circular ecosystem for batteries?
No, absolutely. So it's an excellent question again. Sun Mobility per se obviously manufactures batteries in-house, right? In Bangalore, so we have a factory in Bangalore that basically assembles and produces batteries there. Our cycle life obviously is to a particular point. So we say, for example, we have two types of batteries, again interoperable, so both the batteries can be used in the same vehicle, a higher capacity and a slightly lower capacity, but that doesn't matter because it basically is interoperable and can go into the same vehicle. We obviously take out the battery at a depth of discharge of whenever the battery capacity reaches 80%, which means that we put in new batteries so that the end customer should not suffer. Right? So the real advantage that we're trying to break is that there is not going to be a varied range that an end customer gets from a battery even after a couple of years. Everyone talks about financing. One of the major challenges, which was rightly mentioned in the group, was battery.
Right.
And what do you do with the battery after a couple of years?
Exactly.
What we're trying to solve is obviously we finance our batteries on a cash flow perspective, because on a battery as a service model,
right,
which takes that risk away from an end customer.
Correct.
And we replace it to an extent which is brand new, so that he doesn't have that variation of range in his running.
So is there a hidden opportunity of testing and validation there as well?
Absolutely.
With very few people in the Indian context who are actually manufacturing testing and validation equipment.
Absolutely.
So is that an opportunity there?
Absolutely. So testing and validation, so obviously, talking a little bit more about our battery swapping station, which is, smart in itself, will basically tell you the number of cycles the battery has run. It sort of runs the checks on the battery whenever it comes for a swap, will tell you the temperature, etc., and the number of cycles. So testing and validation also, it will not basically it will not provide you that battery if it doesn't go through all the checks in the swapping station, right? So it is a smart station which takes care of a lot of analytics and brings out data when the battery is ready. So say for example, we don't dispense a battery which is 28 degrees. We cool it down. It is a fast charging station. We take care of all those checks and testing and validation is sort of part of that.
Understood.
And when it comes to cycle life, right? I mean, right now, all of us are in an early stage of end of life for one particular battery or a bunch of batteries. I'm sure they are. But end of life, from what we understand and what we perceive, is that it is going to be used as a energy storage for fixed for energy producing plants. Like so, for like a solar plant would be generating electricity and then could be stored in that, and you still have about a couple of thousand cycles left.
Typically second life. Yeah.
The second life batteries. And then, as you mentioned, the end of life, when everything else gets done, then you have to dispose them, which is a huge point of topic globally, where I'm sure you would be able to talk about more.
Understood. Very good points. Thanks a lot for that, Rajat. So I'll come to you, Vivek, now. I'm saving the best for the last. Exciting always to speak to startups in the EV space. So Vivek, you are the founder, you are the CBO, correct me if I'm wrong?
Yes.
At Hop Electric. Excellent. So first of all, congratulations to you as well for running a pilot for battery swapping with 5 kiosks and 50 swappable electric scooters in Rajasthan. Am I correct about that?
Yes, correct.
Excellent. So very few OEMs have done that. OEMs who have gotten into the space of swappable batteries and kiosks. Now, the bottom line, or what I read from it, is that you are essentially giving the customer a choice whether to charge at home or to swap a battery, right? So that level of democracy is being offered to the customer. Now, there are 2 parts I'd like to hear your thoughts on. One, do you see this as a differentiator for the Hop Electric brand? Because very few other OEMs have done it so far. So do you see that as a differentiator, number 1? And number 2, again, through the swappable kiosks, being an electric vehicle OEM, you have access to a lot of data. Again, we spoke about that earlier as well. Battery performance, vehicle usage, rider behavior, and so on. So do you see you can leverage this data and start offering customized products and solutions to specific regions and specific pockets of customers? Again, something no other OEM has been able to do today. So how do you see yourself playing a role as a differentiator and leveraging data?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's a very interesting questions, though. So I'll start with the first question, and in order to put it in the right word, I think how it all started is that we really wanted to know how we can take the electric vehicle forward to the market. So the first thing comes in mind is awareness. We strongly feel that we found that initially, when it comes to electric vehicle, the set of awareness which the government is trying to anticipate, the OEMs are trying to anticipating since the day one, it's still missing. The connect is missing. The customer is not able to connect with the product. So the initial thought to come up with a range of product as well as the swapping system to bridge that gap so that we can let the customer know what we are doing, how this product can be benefited for you, how you can use it. Right. So that's how we started, and we installed some 5. In fact, the number is like 8 now. Okay. And we've installed, and we let the customer experience it, and especially the last mile delivery partners. As most of us have said that, the problem with the battery is, or probably the current situation in the industry is, it's like a chicken and egg story. Yeah. The ecosystem would come when the product, the enough demand or even supply would be there. So it's like once we have enough electric vehicle on board, probably the infrastructure would be more, I would say the right set of answer would be provided once we have that. So it has actually helped us to bridge that gap. It has helped us to let those last mile delivery partners to come up to us with their real-time problems and how we can fix them, specifically with the product, the IoT, the software solutions, correct, and definitely battery swapping station. See, we are already aware of when it comes to the industry, battery is one of the key component when it comes to electric vehicle. And there are many things which are still under progress. We are working on it. as Mr. Sharma's PPT very clearly mentioned, that what is the situation today and probably in the next 10 years. And to be very honest, when looking at NMC, LFP, there are many other technologies that we are working upon. And I find something very interesting, like just to quote as aluminum air.
Yeah.
I strongly feel that looking at the global challenges, what we are facing, Russia and Ukraine, and there are so many things happening across the globe. So coming from Iran then to China, or probably, for such a big, one of the automotive is considered as one of the biggest industry for any country. So as for India, being the 5th largest economy of the world. So it becomes very, very important to take that decision. It cannot be taken, in a fast track or probably in rush. So probably the government is taking time, and we have started a lot of investments in R&Ds, and a lot of research and R&Ds is being done on a product like aluminum air, because India being the 5th largest mines holder of aluminum, and we are working with companies like Finergy, an Israeli-based organization. And who knows, tomorrow the entire technology goes, south to north or north to south. Probably we would start manufacturing NMC, LFP, we would start focusing on aluminum air. So this is a time of transformation that what we have observed in the last 5 years. So HOP, we really would like to focus upon a product which makes more sense for the customer. It should be competitive at the fair and competent price for sure. So we are doing all this testing and now trying to keep this pieces in place and trying to come up with a more solution-oriented approach, probably definitely in a phase-wise manner. India is a big country. We cannot go on a large scale like that. So far so good. We are getting good response to the agenda. The big, I would say the motive behind doing this entire swapping station was to let people aware, use it, experience it, and then we can scale it up.
That's a very good point you made, Vivek, especially on the battery chemistry, right? Today we've got so many chemistries, and some of them are still in early research and development stages. We do not know what is going to be commercialized. So very good point. I'll pose that again to the panelists in a few minutes from now. So I'll come back to you, Arvind. Very few ecosystem players in the electrification space are vertical integrators. You're probably one of the few players who's very, very close to being a vertical integrator. You've got mechatronics, you've got electric motors, you've got BMS. You're just stopping short of manufacturing an electric two-wheeler yourself. Just a hypothetical curiosity question. Can we see a tier 1 or tier 0.5 supplier like you becoming an electric two-wheeler OEM by yourself? Will we see a Spark Minda branded electric two-wheeler anytime soon?
First of all, there are over 30 startups alone in two-wheeler EVs. No, so we don't want to get into this rat race. It looks like everybody and their brother is starting to make their own EVs. There's a joke, in Coimbatore, if you go down south, every house makes hub motors or e-motors. So no, we don't want to become an OEM, okay? But the concept of a tier 0.5 is, it's not something that we have actively debated internally, but it's something interesting, because, for example, we have been requested by some companies in Spain and Portugal to say, hey, Spark Minda, you guys do everything. You guys are good at mechanical, mechatronics. You're getting into electronics. You have, very capable software team. So, we have a tech center in Pune that has over 300 embedded and software people. So we have received requests like that. So it is not lost upon on us that there is this possibility where we could assemble EVs for a third party.
Right.
But the last thing we want to do is to compete with our own customers. So we probably will not get into that. But having said that, I think the main thing is to have all of the key tier 1 and even tier 2 in some cases. Like, for example, we have telematics units that are sitting on top of Sun Mobility swappable batteries,
Correct.
which are measuring state of charge and battery health, for example, right? So we are quite happy to support the proliferation of EVs. Like I said, I think we discussed earlier as well that we in Spark Minda even like to cheer our competitors.
Yeah.
We want to make sure EVs happen quickly. It's in the national interest. And we're very happy to participate. And that's why I think all the technologies, as you mentioned, antennas, and just proliferation into telematics, battery chargers. We make onboard as well as off-board chargers. We are into swappable batteries, DC-DC converters. So we want to, let's say, dominate the world of components and systems and become a one-stop shop supplier that can do multiple products, and also getting into more and more power electronics. So far we don't have motors yet. We don't make battery cells, packs, but around that basic element, everything else we want to, all the real estate, even die casting, for example, aluminum die casting, and possibly the move into forging. That's also something we're investigating, because EVs need to be very lightweight to maximize the range. So to answer your question, tier 0.5, not yet, but everything around that to maximize our presence, or let's say real estate, within the two-wheeler EV ecosystem as a tier 1, and even in some cases as a tier 2.
Tier 2, understood.
Thanks.
Very valid points. Thanks, Arvind. Srinivas, I'm coming to you back again now. So, wear your hat as an OEM from your previous experience, of course, and also Bike Bazaar as well. The point Vivek made on battery chemistry. Today we've got multiple battery chemistries. Some of them are in early stages, and probably we'll never reach a stage where there will be one or two battery chemistry. There will be multiple options. So from a financing perspective, I go back to the point on awareness. Is this a black hole for the financiers? Because I really doubt if financiers or financing companies will be able to understand battery chemistries going forward. So is that an additional hurdle when we talk about any form of standardization or financing of electric two-wheelers? How do you see evolution of batteries and battery chemistries from your OEM experience and also from Bike Bazaar's experience?
Yeah, absolutely. You're very, very right. See, when we finance IC engine vehicles, the technology is, the technology has evolved, but it's basically a 100-year-old technology. And as a financier, I don't care, what is there inside. Okay, there are 5 brands or 6 brands of vehicles, and they have their warranties and all that. There is a resale value. So it's a product that you do. And for example, if there is a customer who is, who doesn't have a civil score, a customer who doesn't, I'm able to still finance the customer because, I know that the vehicle has certain value, etc. and all that. So all the more reason, I think, financing of electric vehicles is going to become a specialist game and not a generalist game. And one of the first things that we have done over a period of time is that my company today has almost 50 service engineers who understand electric vehicles. Now, as a finance company, you have actually engineers.
Exactly.
And this is the first thing which we did. We hired engineers actually.
There you go.
And by the way, there's a joke in the industry that when I joined Bajaj, I was told that I was only one of the few electrical engineers in a mechanical company. So
now it's the other way around.
Yeah, it's becoming the other way around now. In fact, somebody invited me to be part of the panel of drafting the specs, saying that, no, you're the electrical engineer, you can do it. So I said, no, I don't understand technology. But yes, so I think specialization is going to be the key for this. And that's one of the reasons why we don't do anything else other than two-wheelers. Okay. So at Bike Bazaar, we want to be the complete life cycle specialist of two-wheeler. We want to basically be financing an electric two-wheeler. We want to actually lease the electric two-wheeler. We want to take it back. We want to replace the battery. Right. We want to have we want to lease it again, create a second-hand market, do the servicing. In fact, it's a myth that electric vehicles don't need service. Okay, anybody who feels that electric vehicle don't need service is completely wrong. I have seen this myself. Especially the way the delivery boys, drive the vehicles, etc., and all that. I mean, OEMs who are, and the other issue is this, as you said, everybody and their grandfather is making electric vehicle today. I mean, there's 60 players today, almost 60 plus players. So most of them will die. So the point is that whom do you focus on? Whom do you concentrate on? Technology is changing. The players will vanish.
I can see fumes coming out of Vivek's head.
Yeah.
As you say that. Just joking. Sorry, go ahead.
So I think I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that I think generally there is a stability in the industry will not be expected so fast. It's going to take 10, 15 years now. I mean, the IC engine vehicles have evolved over a period of time. So I would say that it's a fantastic opportunity for a finance company, but they need to be specialists and they need to actually get involved in the technology part. They will not start designing batteries, of course, But we need to understand what's happening really.
Completely agree, and I was quite surprised myself when you said you've got 50 technical or engineers, in your financing space. So, yeah, please.
I guess so rightly said. And when it comes to Hop and overall, like I have sold more than 25,000 electric vehicles so far in the last 5 years, and I've seen that. In my last 5 years of electric vehicle, I strongly feel that by 2023, in order to answer this question in a more numbers way, more substantial way, is that by the next year, probably we would have, usually a battery is one of the key factor, the cost factor. And we would getting a substantial volume in terms of the battery, which is going to complete the first cycle.
Correct.
Now, this is going to be a very important role. When it comes to finance, even on papers, I'm Shah Rukh Khan, they would consider it as I'm Shah Rukh Khan. For them, it's like black and white. वो आपके कहने पे नहीं चलते हैं. So as your CIBIL score and all things, when it comes to the product, when it comes to even, if I talk about this new industry, the new EV, if I talk about globally, even the Tesla has gone, bygone the conventional players who've been running their show for the last decades. So this is happening. In fact, the finance companies are aware of this new change because most of the companies, if I talk about top 5 names in electric vehicle, they are not those conventional players. So they are aware of that there's a new technology and it is disrupting the automotive market and it's there. It's just that the problem with finance that we have faced in the market while selling these products is that trust factor. Mm-hmm. It's very important to gain that trust from the finance. And it's very difficult, a product from Hop, from Loia, from Aether, from Okinawa. The problem is the cycle. They do not have that information to validate it. So I strongly feel by 2023, we would get some answer because as Mr. Sharma's PPT clearly indicates that this is, I would say, a milestone year wherein we would be going to be like minimum 5% of the ICE industry. The percentage is growing. So by the end of this year, you would have a substantial data to validate, to share with others. We have already started looking at the refurbished of EV market, encouraged by top 3-4 players. And since I look after the entire sales and operations market for so many years, so I see that the things have started happening. This is a time of service, as Sir rightly said, because selling automotive, I think it's not a task any longer, because this is something which is need of the hour. The government is driving, OEMs are knowing the fact, this is a global fact that it would take place. But it's the after-sales service which is going to play a very, very important role in next 3 to 4 years. So yes, definitely, there are many players who are making, like almost in every house, but with the foundation, with the right set of principle, probably the brand can take up. And there is a huge opportunity lying there.
Correct. I think as we see more and more vehicles on the road, the question of trust and validity will hopefully automatically get answered on its own. Yeah. So Ayush, wanted to come back to you on the battery chemistry part and also interoperability part, right? As an OEM, how do you protect yourself from these challenges, right? Because obviously you need to be prepared for multiple chemistries, and also if battery swapping takes off in a big way, you need to be prepared for interoperability as well. So as an OEM, 3-wheeler or 2-wheeler OEM, how do you protect yourself against it?
So as far as the first part, the technology or the multiple chemistries which are available on the lithium ion, we are trying to be agnostic on that part.
Yeah.
We are doing it using using CAN-based controllers, which you can tweak it or redesign it or change the parameter requirement as per the need.
Got it.
Depending upon what kind of input you are using on the vehicle, it can be done on a controller base or a VCU kind of a unit which can be used, and we can easily do that. We want to be 100% agnostic on that part. Whether you use LFP, whether you use NMC or any technologies which is going to be evolved over a period of time.
Right.
We definitely see that lithium ion is always be a fuel for the vehicle, and you need to be sure that whatever fuel you want to use on the vehicle, it should not affect the riding experience. Correct. Or the different kind of benefits which our consumer is trying to evaluate from them. As far as what I have seen over a period of time, different chemistries take time to evolve. We have been talking about lithium ion from more than 20 years now. What we see today is only 2 of them, which is readily available. We are talking about sodium and air-based technologies, LTOs, everything which is again in the making. Few of them are evolving, few are still at the advanced stage of development. Few of them is still a very nascent pilot, which are happening across the globe. So these kind of evolved technologies will definitely happen. We need to be agnostic. The second question, which you said about interoperability, where the swapping comes into a very important part of it. Government is very clear that they want to make sure that the swapping infrastructure, whichever will come back, or the OEMs, any swapping battery should go into any vehicle, and any vehicle should adapt with any swapping infrastructure. So that is very important if you want to achieve a goal where the price points are kept intact.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the cost of ownership of the vehicle or the cost of vehicle per se is going to be high. And let us see on a context that you don't buy the fuel when you buy the vehicle. I've been saying this many a times at multiple places and forums. You should not buy fuel with the vehicle. If you have been doing that, you would have a much bigger tank at your vehicle, in IC vehicle, as compared to what you are doing in electric vehicle. So that is why swapping is more important, makes feasible sense. Think about, I'll give a comparison with the IC vehicle. We have been manufacturing IC vehicles, diesel vehicles, 3-wheelers from 2012 to 2020. And, when we switched over and we decided that we are going to be 100% electric vehicle company, at that point of time, BS6 was kicking in. The price of the vehicle with BS6 engine was inching towards 3.5 lakh price point, which is a very sweet spot for electric vehicle, which can be used even with the fixed batteries and subsidies to be in place. So those kind of things will definitely help us with the subsidy. But if subsidies goes, I can tell you swapping is the best possible solution, where the price of the vehicle will come down to as low as 2.5 lakh vehicles, which will be almost 75,000 to 1 lakh rupees cheaper than any gasoline competition which is there in the market.
Correct.
So transferability, where the battery can be swapped with multiple OEMs, is the need, and will definitely in favor of that. We have to only see how fast, how quick we can adapt with multiple swapping infrastructures which will be available down the line, and that can definitely be tackled by using software. Being electric vehicle is very software oriented, and we can have some kind of technologies. The price is the most major constraint, and the time which is required to adapt that.
Correct. Hopefully the provision to register vehicles without the battery will go a long way in, like you said, selling the vehicle without fuel necessarily, right?
So it is already there.
Correct.
The government has notified it already. But again, it's again flimsy because of fire and other instances, that whether the compatibility with the vehicle is required, what kind of safety parameters need to be installed, how the vehicle need to be homologated. So those questions are still unanswered. And the most important question, which is I have put up to Ministry, MORTH on that matter, is you can't transfer the ownership of an electric vehicle. I have been talking about this quite some time, which is the biggest flaw, which is been left open-ended in the complete ecosystem of electric vehicle.
Right.
And definitely that is the question of concern for all the financiers and everyone.
Correct. Yeah, that's a very important question. Hopefully we'll get an answer soon. In the interest of time, so there is one last point, which can be used as a closing remark from, I want the perspectives from Arvind, Lokesh and Srinivas. Industry academia collaboration. This is something that we have been seeing, on a variety of levels, right? Arvind, from your Foresia days, I was involved in a lot of projects when I was in the university as well. However, in India, it's restricted to certain pockets. You've got IIT in Delhi, you've got IIT Madras, maybe one or two more. But there is a need today for a closer collaboration between industry and academia, because from the industry perspective, the quality of engineers who are coming out, higher ability and so on, or even the course content, not in line with what the industry wants today. So how do you see this evolving in India? What should be done to foster greater collaboration between industry and academia?
I think it's a very, very good question. I think it depends on the technology gap. See, we haven't talked about cybersecurity yet in this forum, but with the advent of EVs and EVs by nature being connected
Correct.
To the cloud, raises serious questions of cybersecurity.
Yeah.
And now, along with the AIS 156 standard for safety, we also have the AIS 189, which is for cybersecurity. This is coming up, all right? And this poses very important, let's say, certification, homologation type questions for all EV makers, that they have to make sure their vehicles are safe and secure to drive on the road, right? Now, cybersecurity is also another part of our, let's say, basket of products and services. So in terms of, vulnerability assessment, penetration testing, intrusion detection systems, and so on. So now, to answer specifically your question, we have now started collaborating with academia here, because here's a lot of the thought leadership.
Correct.
Is either it's a sort of half joking when I say it's either in Israel or it's in one of the IITs.
Especially cybersecurity.
Especially cybersecurity. And this is extremely complicated, because you have to know many, many aspects. It's the only field where you have to keep learning every day, because every day the hackers get smarter. The other one is you have to know hardware, you have to know software, you have to know between hardware and the cloud, and you have to know the cloud. So you have to know so many different disciplines for you to be able to master this topic. Now, Israel, because of the situation politically, geopolitically, they are already masters at it. But in India, we have to master it. And a lot of this now, I wouldn't say it exists at the same level as that of what we have in Israel, but at least the academia is there. There's a lot of interest. And we're also funding that here. So this is something we're just starting. But this would be one example of the collaboration between industry and academia.
Understood. Lokesh, your thoughts?
Yeah, so we started, when we started EV Journey, right, the first project we pitched, we actually got funded by DHI. And that was with IIT Hyderabad.
Right.
So that was, the professor was really expert in the acoustic, and we said, how do we do that? So as an NBC, we have been actually partnering with the various IITs, and typically not Chennai and Delhi. So we have gone to the newer one where the professors are hungry, the students want to work on the real problems, and so on. So we are actually working with Hyderabad, Patna, and Guwahati on various things. Now, the students, still it's hard to get in,
right,
because it's a hardcore mechanical field. Students are lured by AI, data analytics, which gives them the job, and so on. But we are still finding that could be some work which could be done. Another thing which we have done is we actually have partnered with BITS Pilani and funding a PhD student for this exactly, the prognostic.
Understood.
So where we give them the access of our lab, they pull the data and actually gives the result back saying that, okay, this is what it makes sense. Because what we found most of the places is that there is a gap between what is researched and what industry wants.
Understood. Yeah.
Research people want 99.99995.
Yeah.
And industry says 80% is okay. Yeah. And it's a lot of time, it becomes a good discussion between me and the advisor. How do we say that, okay, 80% is good enough, and let's get the student PhD.
The striking a balance between the two is going to be very, very critical.
So, but we have been,
exactly. Yeah.
That's where it comes in. So we have been working quite a lot. Of course, the avenues are a little less. We need to still push it, but we are getting good support, more with the newer IITs and the second round than the top one, because they just want to work only on top of that.
Correct. So Srinivas, your thoughts, just touching upon what Arvind mentioned, is cybersecurity going to add another layer of uncertainty for financing?
Yes, because we are depending heavily on actually tracking the vehicle. We are depending heavily on, being able to stop the vehicle and also, restricting the area of operation, etc. So there's a lot of data, and I think finance companies are not accustomed to this kind of data. They're accustomed to the financial data, wherein anyway the RBI controls the whole thing. So there are things, for example, I cannot store your Aadhaar card number. Right. Okay, it has to be blanked out. Okay, and when I see Aadhaar card duplicates being given all over the place, it's very funny that the NBFCs have to not store the Aadhaar card number. So I think it's also a question of what RBI will come out with. Okay, they will also come out with guidelines on this. Over a period of time, it will become very important. Why should I keep on tracking a person, for example? Okay, just because I have financed him. Okay, so when do I track him? And when do I stop? For example, do I stop a person just because he delayed his EMI and maybe it was an emergency, maybe he was going somewhere, and you create a problem for him. So I guess these industries today will have to start self-regulating to a certain extent, but in very short time, I think RBI etc. is going to come into it. The second point I just wanted to make quickly on the talent thing,
Yeah.
and just putting my hat back to Bajaj. Okay, and year 2000, not many people know I was the HR head of Bajaj actually.
There you go.
And I think we had zero R&D almost at that time.
Back then. Yeah.
And now I think you know what kind of R&D we have at Bajaj today. And it was all hired actually by fresh engineers
Right.
from the National Institute of Technologies, or RECs as you may call it. Not necessarily from IITs, but from RECs and all that. And I think that's exactly what industry will have to do again, because the scale, if you are going to finally replace all the IC engine vehicles with electric, I see the biggest hindrance to this is the scale with which R&D has been developed in India for two-wheelers. According to me, I consider today for IC engines less than 500 cc, India is the only place for developing it. That's the reason why a Harley Davidson, that's the reason why a KTM, etc. They have come here for the technology. They have not come here for just cheap manufacturing.
Yeah, even BMW.
Yeah, absolutely. They cannot do a product at a 30% cheaper price the way we are doing it in India. Now for electric to reach that level, I feel that that's where the biggest challenge is, that how are you going to develop this R&D? How are you going to do this yourself? IC engines, we have already reached that level.
Right. So thank you very much, gentlemen. I mean, it's very clear. I think going forward, we'll never have a situation where one size fits all or one solution fits all. Everything will depend on use cases, right? Whether it is commercial, fleets, or individual owners, or different customer segments. And that is what India is all about. And we will see a lot of these solutions, products, and services coexisting rather than competing with each other. So with that, thank you very much, gentlemen, for your wonderful thoughts. I really apologize we couldn't take audience questions, hopefully the next time, but we are all here. Feel free to interact with us. So thank you very much once again. You've been a wonderful audience. Thank you.